Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and this week I read Suspiria de Profundis by Thomas de Quincey, more famous for his Confessions of an English Opium Eater. I've never tried opium, never will. This is sort of a sequel to Confessions of an English Opium Eater. It came out 24 years after Confessions had come out, and this sort of acts in a very different way. It's a book that I think I enjoyed reading significantly more than Confessions. Suspiria de Profundis, Sighs from the Depths, I believe is what that translates to. Yeah, Sighs from the Depths. Great title, legitimately great title. The cover's great. It's got a detail from a painting based in Paradise Lost, so it's the Shepherd's Dream, yeah, from 1793. The Shepherd's Dream by Henry Fuseli. Suspiria is an interesting book. It has some major influences across horror fiction and sort of like weird fiction and even horror films throughout the 20th century, and I'll talk about those at the end. I just kind of want to jump into the book. So as a whole, the book is interesting. Thomas de Quincey's like 60 now when he writes Suspiria de Profundis. We're 24 years after Confessions of an English Opium Eater, which kind of made him semi-notorious, even for among the high romantics and low romantics. He was still semi-notorious for coming out with 80 pages on what it's like to be an opium addict at that time. But Suspiria is interesting. The first probably 60 pages are all about his childhood and these experiences he has around experiencing grief. What it's like when two of his sisters die in childhood. What that like is for him. What that does to his mind. What that does to his sensibility particularly. Then we get this really strange passage where he talks about a palimpsest, which you don't really deal with anymore, even in printing, and certainly not with digital media. But the idea of a palimpsest where there would be text, and then it would be, sort of like erased or covered up with a new text, and then that would happen over and over, but there would be remains of that original text. And so De Quincey's entire section on this palimpsest, and really his whole section about his childhood and all the trauma he has with his sisters dying in childhood, is this idea that those experiences imprint on his mind and they stay with him through the rest of his life. So he becomes susceptible to the hallucinogenic dreams and these weird experiences he has as an opium addict, but just as a person because of those experiences he had in childhood. And so it's that's really the first whole section. It was difficult to read because of how depressing it is to read about kids being ill or having medical conditions that at the time were incurable, or even now there are kids with medical conditions that are incurable. And so that was really hard to read. And then he closes, the part 2 is all about his experiences at Eton and at Oxford, and really how he just kind of like leaves and goes, calls it a ramble, but it's months that he just goes to North Wales and hangs out and has fun. But the Rambling Raconteur is not going to condemn a 4-month ramble in North Wales. But he talks about this, and he talks about how he didn't particularly care about necessarily what he was learning. He wanted to learn Greek really well. He was much better at writing Latin, and so he went to school. He wrote Latin better, Latin hexameter better than the older students, and so some of them are just tired of, he's being used as the tool, the scourge for these older students, and they just come up to tell him, at like sports time, free time, cut it out, dude. We can't deal with this anymore. Like, if you don't do that, I'm gonna annihilate you. And De Quincey goes, well, I was not going to write my worst verse. I would write my best. And so he endeavors to write even better Latin hexameter verse to like shove it in the face of these older students, even though he's jealous of the fact that they know Greek and can read Sophocles, who is this hallowed name for him. So that's the book. But in the middle is the section that's really important to me as a reader, as a consumer of entertainment and media and art. And that is the section that it has this really strange title. It is at the end of part 1, and it's called Levana and Our Ladies of Sorrow. So this follows on the palimpsest. Levana and Our Ladies of Sorrow, and he talks about these 3 mothers of sorrow. Mother Suspiriorum, Mother, what is it? Mater Lacrimarum, the Mother of Tears, Mater Suspiriorum, Our Lady of Sighs, and then Mater Tenebrarum, Our Lady of Darkness. Those 3 were used as the mythology for Dario Argento when he went and made Suspiria and Inferno in the late 70s and early 80s. And then later on, he made a Mother of Tears, which I didn't particularly enjoy or think was a good film. But in Inferno, he actually has a character read passages that are basically straight out of De Quincey. And so he has this wild section. And these are some of like the types of things you find in Suspiria de Profundis. The spark of fatal fire fell upon that train of predispositions. It's good. And he talks about, you know, if you know bad things are going to happen, would you still accept the bad things with the good things? You know, was the blessing greater from the heavenly presence or the blight which followed thy departure? Can a man weigh off and value the glories of dawn against the darkness of a hurricane? Or if he could, how is it that when a memorable love has been followed by a memorable bereavement, even suppose that God would replace the sufferer in a point of time anterior to the entire experience and offer to conceal the woe, but so that the sweet face which had caused the woe should also be obliterated, vehemently would every man shrink from the exchange. And then he talks about time sort of like as how he perceives time. Time becomes infinitely elastic, stretching out to such immeasurable and vanishing termini that it seems ridiculous to compute the sense of it on waking by expressions commensurate to human life. In valuing the virtual time lived during some dreams, the measurement of generations is ridiculous, by millennia is ridiculous, by eons, I should say, if eons were more determinate, would also be ridiculous. And I'm going to come and read a full page from the end of part 1 of Suspiria de Profundis. It's really fantastic. But this one, the education of Levana, meaning sort of these 3 mothers, therefore is meant not the poor machinery that moves by spelling books and grammars, but that mighty system of central forces hidden in a deep bosom of human life, which by passion, by strife, by temptation, by the energies of resistance, works forever upon children, resting not day or night any more than the mighty wheel of day and night themselves, whose moments, like restless spokes, are glimmering forever as they revolve. And so you have this sense, he's very influenced by the high romantic tradition, by romantic poetry. Even the idea of the personality of an addict became more prevalent within the romantic movement. But here's this section. He's talking about a city in Jamaica that was overwhelmed by a hurricane, Savannah Lamar. And so he's writing about this, and he goes, look here, put into a Roman clepsydra 100 drops of water. Let these run out as the sands in an hourglass, every drop measuring the 100th part of a second, so that each shall represent but the 360,000th part of an hour. Now count the drops as they race along, and, when the 50th of the 100 is passing, behold, 49 are not, because already they have perished, and 50 are not, because they are yet to come. You see, therefore, how narrow, how incalculably narrow, is the true and actual present. Of that time which we call the present, hardly 100th part but belongs either to a past which has fled, or to a future which is still on the wing. It has perished, or it is not born. It was, or it is not. Yet even this approximation to the truth is infinitely false. For again, subdivide that solitary drop. We started with 100, we let 49 pass, we've got 50 above, and we've got this one we're focusing on. Subdivide that solitary drop, which only was found to represent the present, into a lower series of similar fractions, and the actual present which you arrest measures now but the 36th millionth of an hour, and so by infinite declensions, the true and very present, in which only we live and enjoy, will vanish into a mote of a mote, distinguishable only by a heavenly vision. Therefore, the present, which only man possesses, offers less capacity for his footing than the slenderest film that ever spider twisted from her womb. Therefore, also, even this incalculable shadow from the narrowest pencil of moonlight is more transitory than geometry can measure, or thought of angel can overtake. The time which is contracts into a mathematic point, and even that point perishes 1,000 times before we can utter its birth. All is finite in the present, and even that finite is infinite in its velocity of flight towards death. Which is just slightly nonsensical and insane, and also incredibly powerful. And the final sentence he has is, "Death we can face, but knowing as some of us do what is human life, which of us is it that without shuddering could, if consciously we were summoned, face the hour of birth?" And so there's this degree of pessimism that runs through the work. Part of it works as a counterpoint to answering some criticisms that had occurred, I mean, legitimately a generation earlier when he published Confessions of an English Opium Eater. And he works to respond to those. He talks about his experiences in his memory and this idea of the palimpsest in a particularly strange way. He seems very focused on the idea of like time being elastic, memory being elastic, and our experiences basically zinging us and pinballing us through time, you know, in our subconscious. And it's fascinating. But again, I wouldn't necessarily read the entire work unless you're really into that and really into that genre. I would say though, if you can find, and I'll look for like a PDF copy or something online of the Levana and Our Ladies of Sorrow, that was really powerful, like 14-page section that I just loved. In terms of other works that remind me of it, I don't know that the picture of Dorian Gray would exist without the work. It just feels that way. Another one that pops to mind is De Quincey's firmly in the Romantic tradition, but he writes Suspiria de Profundis and publishes it in 1845. So we're really up, like Romanticism has crested. You know, Victor Hugo's still around. He hasn't published Les Miserables yet. But a lot of the Romantics have sort of crested. But somebody else who feels more romantic than Victorian is Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which I just talked about yesterday. Again, fantastic work, and a work that seems just imbued with emotion and the power of the subconscious, the power, you know, that wells forward into the present. And then this will be sort of a digression, but my own experience in terms of how the heck I ever came to acquiring this book and reading it is quite comical. The gateway was I had a copy of H.P. Lovecraft's stories that at the back of the volume it recommended Confessions of an English Opium Eater, and so I was like, what the heck? You know, I found a cheap copy, picked it up, and I was like, this is weird. It really feels more like the dream cycle stories of Lovecraft. Those seem more influenced by this than some of his more like Cthulhu mythos stories. But the way I discovered Lovecraft, and thus De Quincey, was the film Hellboy from like 2003 or 2004. I saw it in college and was like, this is okay, no, not great. I hadn't read the comics at the time. And it started with a quote from De Vermis Mysteriis and The Mysteries of the Worm. And I thought, that sounds like a text I want to find out about. I had no idea it was like this made-up text from the writings of Robert E. Howard. And so that film and that sort of epigraph at the beginning of the film served as a gateway to Howard, Lovecraft, and ultimately De Quincey. So anyways, that's my story. Sighs from the desert. Thank you, everyone. Bye.